The morning mist clung to the rocky canyon walls like ghostly fingers when Sarah Mackenzie first spotted the tracks. 3 days of hard riding had brought her deeper into the wilderness than any woman from their settlement had ever ventured, but desperation had a way of pushing people beyond their limits. Her younger brother Tommy had been missing for a week now, and the menfolk had given up the search after finding his torn shirt near the river, blood-stained and shredded. But Sarah refused to believe Tommy was dead. She knew her brother better than anyone. He was clever, resourceful, and too stubborn to die easy. The tracks she followed now weren't his small boots, but the massive paw prints of something that shouldn't exist in these mountains. Each print was nearly the size of a dinner plate, with claw marks that gouged deep furrows in the muddy earth. The beast had been terrorizing their frontier settlement for months. Livestock disappeared in the night, and hunters who ventured too far into the woods were found days later, if they were found at all. The survivors spoke of yellow eyes the size of lanterns and a roar that could shake pine needles from the trees. Most folks called it a bear gone mad, but old Henrik the Trapper insisted it was something else entirely, something that walked upright when it pleased, and had intelligence burning behind those terrible eyes. Sarah dismounted from her mare. Studying the tracks more carefully, they were fresh, maybe 2 hours old, and they led directly toward a narrow pass between two towering cliff faces. Her horse whinnied nervously, ears flicking back and forth as it caught scent of something wild and dangerous. Sarah stroked the animal's neck, whispering soothing words while her own heart hammered against her ribs. She had grown up on stories of her grandfather's hunting expeditions, tales of tracking wounded grizzlies through snow-covered peaks and facing down mountain lions with nothing but a rifle and steady nerves. But this felt different. The very air seemed to thrum with malevolent energy, and every shadow between the rocks looked like it might hide something with teeth and claws. Following the tracks on foot, Sarah led her horse through the narrow pass. The canyon walls rose on either side like the ribs of some enormous beast, blocking out most of the morning sun and casting everything in a dim, bluish twilight. Strange sounds echoed off the stones, scraping, scratching noises that could have been wind through crevices or something much worse moving just out of sight. The tracks led to a wider area where the canyon opened into a natural bowl surrounded by steep walls. Ancient rock slides had left massive boulders scattered across the floor like a giant's abandoned toys. Sarah tied her horse to a stunted pine growing from a crack in the rock face, then continued on foot with her father's old hunting rifle clutched in her hands. That was when she heard it, a low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from the earth itself. Sarah froze, every muscle in her body coiled tight as a spring. The sound came again, definitely from somewhere among the scattered boulders ahead. But mixed with that bestial rumble was something else, something that made her blood run cold. A human voice, weak and desperate, calling for help. "Tommy?" she whispered, barely breathing the word. The cry came again. Definitely human, definitely male, and definitely coming from the same direction as those terrible growls. Sarah forced her legs to move, creeping from boulder to boulder, using the massive stones for cover as she worked her way deeper into the natural amphitheater. The sounds grew louder, growls and snarls punctuated by human whimpers and what sounded like scratching against stone. She rounded a house-sized boulder and saw them. The creature was even more massive than the stories suggested, standing nearly 8 feet tall when it reared up on its hind legs. Its fur was black as midnight except for a silver streak running down its massive chest, and those yellow eyes held an intelligence that was somehow more terrifying than simple animal fury. It was digging at something. Massive claws scraping against a pile of smaller rocks that had obviously been disturbed recently. And from beneath those rocks came her brother's voice, weak but unmistakably alive. "Please," Tommy was saying, his words muffled by stone and earth. "Please, I can't move my legs. The rocks are too heavy." The beast paused in its digging and tilted its huge head, listening to the trapped boy's pleas with what looked almost like cruel amusement. Then it resumed its work, but slowly, deliberately, as if it was savoring the process. This wasn't a predator trying to reach its prey quickly. This was something that enjoyed the hunt, the terror, the slow approach of inevitable death. Sarah raised her rifle, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold it steady. The creature was less than 50 yards away, well within range even for her limited marksmanship skills. But as she sighted down the barrel, trying to line up a shot at the beast's massive head, her boot dislodged a small stone that went clattering across the rocky ground. The creature's head snapped up immediately, those burning yellow eyes locking onto her position with predatory focus. For a long moment, neither moved. Sarah stared into those intelligent, malevolent eyes and saw something that chilled her to the bone. Recognition. This thing knew what she was, knew why she was here, and it was pleased to have another victim delivered so conveniently to its territory. Then, it smiled, not the grimace of an animal baring its teeth, but an actual smile that revealed canines the length of railroad spikes. And when it spoke, its voice was like gravel sliding down a mountainside. "Another Mackenzie comes to play," the creature rumbled, never taking its eyes off Sarah. How delightful. I was growing bored with just the boy. Sarah's finger tightened on the trigger, but her hands were shaking too badly to guarantee a clean shot. Miss! And she would likely never get another chance. The creature began moving toward her with a fluid, almost casual gait, in no hurry at all. It knew she was trapped in this canyon bowl just as surely as her brother was trapped beneath those rocks. "Run, Sarah!" Tommy's voice called from his stone prison. "Get out of here! It's too big, too strong! You can't fight it!" But Sarah couldn't run. Not when Tommy was still alive down there. Not when this monster had been terrorizing her family and neighbors for months. She steadied her aim as best she could and pulled the trigger. The rifle's roar echoed off the canyon walls like thunder, and for a moment she thought she had missed entirely. Then the creature stumbled, dark blood beginning to mat the fur on its left shoulder. But instead of falling or fleeing, it just looked down at the wound with what seemed like mild irritation. Then back at Sarah with renewed interest. "Impressive," it growled, beginning to move toward her again with that same unhurried confidence. Most humans run screaming at this point. "You have spirit, little Mackenzie. I shall enjoy breaking it." Sarah worked the rifle's bolt action, ejecting the spent cartridge and chambering a fresh round. But her hands were shaking worse now, and the creature was closing the distance between them with each passing second. At this rate, she might get one more shot before those massive claws reached her. She was backing away, trying to keep distance between herself and the approaching monster, when her foot slipped on loose gravel. Sarah tumbled backward, landing hard on her back with the rifle flying from her grasp. The weapon clattered across the rocky ground, coming to rest just beyond her reach. The creature loomed over her now, blocking out what little light filtered down between the canyon walls. This close, she could see the intelligence burning in those yellow eyes, could smell the reek of old blood and rotting meat on its breath. One massive paw came down on her chest, pinning her to the ground with crushing weight, while razor-sharp claws pricked through her shirt to the skin beneath. "Now," the beast said, its voice a rumbling purr of satisfaction, "we can begin the real hunt." The weight of the creature's paw pressed down on Sarah's chest like a blacksmith's anvil, making each breath a struggle. Those terrible yellow eyes studied her face with predatory curiosity, as if the beast was memorizing every detail of her terror. The claws that pierced through her shirt drew tiny beads of blood, and she could feel the incredible strength in that massive limb, enough to crush her ribcage like dried kindling if the creature chose to apply pressure. "You smell of fear," the beast rumbled, leaning closer till its hot breath washed over her face. But also of determination. Most humans lose that scent quickly when they realize how helpless they are. You cling to hope like a drowning woman clings to driftwood. From somewhere behind the creature, Tommy's voice called out weakly from his stone prison. "Sarah, please, just run when you get the chance. Don't worry about me, this thing. It's not natural. It's been playing with me for days, keeping me alive just to watch me suffer." The beast's massive head turned toward the pile of rocks where Tommy was trapped, and something like amusement flickered across its features. "The boy speaks truth, little Mackenzie. I have been savoring his despair, feeding on his diminishing hope, but two Mackenzies are better than one. The hunt becomes more interesting when there are multiple prey to manage." Sarah's mind raced, searching for any advantage, any weakness she could exploit. The rifle lay just beyond her reach, but even if she could get to it, her first shot had proven that the creature could absorb significant damage and keep fighting. What she needed was not just a weapon, but a strategy. Her grandfather's hunting stories came flooding back to her, tales of wounded animals that became more dangerous when cornered, and how sometimes the hunted became the hunted. But one story stood out, about a grizzly bear that had terrorized a mining camp. Grandfather hadn't killed it with a single perfect shot. Instead, he had used the bear's own aggression against it, leading it into a trap where its size and strength became disadvantages. The creature lifted its paw from her chest, apparently confident that she was sufficiently cowed to remain still. It began to pace around her in a slow circle, like a cat toying with a wounded mouse. "I have ruled these mountains for longer than your settlement has existed," it said conversationally. "I have watched your kind spread like a plague across the wilderness, cutting down ancient forests and driving away the old spirits. But I remain. I adapt. I evolve." Sarah slowly pushed herself up to a sitting position, her eyes never leaving the creature's face. "What are you?" she asked, surprised by how steady her own voice sounded. The beast paused in its pacing, those intelligent eyes studying her with renewed interest. "I am what your people would become if you had the courage to embrace your true nature," it replied. "I am predator without conscience, hunter without mercy. I am the darkness that waits in the deep woods when your campfires burn low." "You're just another animal," Sarah said firmly, getting to her feet despite the creature's proximity. "Bigger and meaner than most, but still just an animal. And animals can be killed." The creature's laugh was like boulders grinding together in an avalanche. "Many have tried, little Mackenzie. Their bones decorate my lair deeper in these mountains. But perhaps you will prove more entertaining than the others before you join them." Sarah began backing toward the canyon wall, her eyes scanning the rocky terrain for anything that might give her an advantage. The scattered boulders, the narrow passages between them, the steep walls rising on all sides. This place was as much a trap for the creature as it was for her, if she could find a way to use its size against it. The beast followed her movement, staying just out of immediate striking distance, but close enough to pounce if she made any sudden moves. "Tell me, human," it said, "what made you think you could face me alone? Surely you knew the stories of what happens to hunters who enter my domain." "Someone has to stop you," Sarah replied, continuing her careful retreat. "You've killed enough innocent people." "Innocent?" The creature tilted its massive head. "There is no innocence in the wilderness, little Mackenzie. There are only predators and prey. Your brother learned this lesson when he wandered too far from his pack. You are learning it now." Sarah's back touched cold stone. She had reached the canyon wall. The creature was between her and any escape route, and Tommy was still trapped somewhere behind those scattered boulders. But as she pressed against the rock face, her fingers found something unexpected. A narrow crevice in the stone, just wide enough for a human to squeeze through, but far too small for something the size of her tormentor. "Nowhere left to run," the beast observed, beginning to advance again. "Shall we end this dance? Or would you prefer to prolong the inevitable?" Instead of answering, Sarah suddenly dove to the side, rolling across the rocky ground toward her fallen rifle. The creature lunged after her with surprising speed, but she was smaller and more agile. Her fingers closed around the weapon's stock, just as massive claws raked the air where her head had been an instant before. She came up firing, not taking time to aim carefully, but just trying to drive the beast back. The rifle's sharp crack echoed off the canyon walls as her shot took the creature in the side, spinning it around with the impact. Dark blood splattered the rocks, but again the wound seemed more an annoyance than a serious injury. "Persistent," the beast snarled, favoring its injured side but still very much in the fight. "I admire that in prey. It makes the eventual surrender so much sweeter." Sarah worked the bolt action again, backing toward the crevice she had discovered. The creature followed, limping slightly but still radiating deadly intent. She needed to get it angry, make it careless. Wounded animals became unpredictable, and unpredictable meant potentially vulnerable. "Is this how you killed the others?" she taunted, raising the rifle again. "By talking them to death? Or do you actually have to work for your meals?" The creature's eyes flared with genuine anger for the first time. "You dare mock me?" it roared, abandoning its casual stalking for a direct charge. Sarah waited until the last possible second, then threw herself sideways into the narrow crevice in the canyon wall. The creature's massive bulk slammed into the rock face with tremendous force, sending chips of stone flying in all directions. But it was too large to follow her into the narrow passage, and its claws could only scrape uselessly at the opening. "Clever little mouse," the beast growled, backing away from the crevice. "But you cannot hide in there forever. And your brother grows weaker by the hour beneath his stone blanket. How long before his cries fall silent entirely?" From her hiding place, Sarah could hear Tommy calling her name, his voice growing noticeably weaker. The creature was right. Time was running out for her brother. But she had achieved something important. She had proven the beast could be outmaneuvered, that its size and strength could become liabilities in the right circumstances. The narrow crevice extended deeper into the rock face, forming a natural chimney that led upward. Sarah began to climb, her boots finding purchase on tiny ledges and her hands gripping rough stone. Behind her, she could hear the creature pacing back and forth, growing more agitated by the minute. "You only delay the inevitable," it called after her. "I will wait, little Mackenzie. I will wait until hunger drives you out, or until your brother's death cries stop echoing in this place. Either way, you will be mine." But Sarah was no longer listening. She climbed steadily upward through the natural chimney, following a faint current of fresh air that suggested an opening somewhere above. Her grandfather had always said that every trap had a way out if you were clever enough to find it. She intended to prove him right. The creature below let out a roar of pure frustration that shook dust from the canyon walls. Sarah smiled grimly as she climbed. The hunter was about to become the hunted, and it was beginning to realize that its prey might be more dangerous than expected. The natural chimney in the rock face proved longer and more treacherous than Sarah had expected. Her hands were bloody and raw by the time she finally saw genuine daylight filtering down from above, and her legs trembled with exhaustion from the climb. But desperation drove her upward, fueled by the knowledge that Tommy was running out of time, and the creature below was growing more agitated with each passing minute. When she finally hauled herself over the lip of the opening, Sarah found herself on a narrow ledge high above the canyon floor. The beast looked smaller from this height, but no less dangerous as it paced back and forth like a caged tiger. She could see the pile of rocks where Tommy was trapped, and her heart clenched as she realized how still and quiet that area had become. The ledge extended along the canyon wall for perhaps 100 yards, connecting to other rocky outcroppings, and eventually leading to what looked like a way down on the far side of the natural amphitheater. More importantly, she could see that several large boulders sat precariously balanced on ledges above where the creature continued its restless patrol. Grandfather's stories included more than one account of using rock slides against dangerous prey. Sarah worked her way carefully along the narrow ledge, testing each foothold before committing her weight. The rifle slung across her back felt heavier with each step, but she knew she would need it before this encounter was finished. Below, the creature had discovered the crevice she had used to escape, and was trying unsuccessfully to follow her up the chimney. Its frustrated roars echoed off the canyon walls like thunder. "Little Mackenzie!" the beast called up to her, having apparently spotted her movement on the high ledge. "You cannot escape these mountains. I know every trail, every hiding place. Come down and face your death with dignity." Sarah ignored the taunts and continued working her way toward the largest of the balanced boulders. This one was easily the size of a small cabin, held in place by what appeared to be a natural fulcrum of smaller stones. If she could find a way to disturb that delicate balance, the resulting rock slide might be enough to either kill the creature or trap it long enough for her to free Tommy and escape. But as she studied the massive boulder and the precarious arrangement keeping it in place, Sarah realized she would need to get much closer to the creature to make this plan work. The rock would have to fall at precisely the right moment, when the beast was in exactly the right position. That meant luring it to the correct spot and holding it there while she triggered the slide. The creature below had given up trying to follow her up the chimney and was now pacing in increasingly tight circles, its intelligent eyes tracking her movement along the high ledge. "Your brother calls for you," it said, and Sarah's heart lurched as she heard Tommy's weak voice echoing off the canyon walls. "Sarah, are you still here? I can't feel my legs anymore. The rocks are so heavy." The beast turned toward the pile of stones with theatrical concern. "Poor little Mackenzie," it crooned in a mockingly gentle voice, "trapped and forgotten while his sister plays mountain goat on the high rocks. Perhaps I should put him out of his misery while we wait for you to come down." "Don't you touch him!" Sarah shouted, her careful composure finally cracking. The creature's laugh was like grinding millstones. "Then come down and stop me, little hunter. Face me like your grandfather would have. Unless the Mackenzie family courage has grown thin over the generations." Sarah forced herself to think past her anger. The creature was trying to provoke her into making a reckless move, but she couldn't let emotion override strategy. She continued working her way toward the balanced boulder, studying the arrangement of stones and trying to calculate angles and timing. From her new position, she could see that the creature's pacing pattern brought it near the base of the cliff face every few minutes. If she could time the rock slide correctly, the massive boulder would strike the canyon floor right where the beast would be standing. But she would only get one chance. Miss, and the creature would undoubtedly be more cautious about its positioning. Sarah unslung her rifle and used the barrel to probe at the smaller stones that held the large boulder in place. Several of them were loose, held by little more than gravity and years of settling. A well-placed shot or a hard shove might be enough to disturb the balance, but she would need to time it perfectly. Below, the creature had moved to the pile of rocks where Tommy was trapped and was slowly, deliberately beginning to add more stones to the pile. "Heavy work," it called up to Sarah conversationally. "But I have all the time in the world as your brother, I wonder." Tommy's cries grew more desperate as additional weight pressed down on his trapped form. Sarah could hear the pain in his voice, could imagine the crushing pressure that was slowly stealing his breath and strength. The creature was using her brother as bait, and they both knew it. "Stop!" Sarah called down. "I'll come down and face you. Just leave him alone!" The beast paused in its work and looked up at her with those burning yellow eyes. "I thought that might get your attention," it said with satisfaction. "But I think not, little Mackenzie. You will come down, but in your own time and by your own choice." The boy serves as motivation. Sarah gritted her teeth and focused on the precarious boulder above her. She had spotted the keystone now, a wedge-shaped piece that seemed to be bearing most of the weight. Remove that one piece, and the entire massive boulder should topple forward onto the canyon floor below. The creature resumed its pacing, adding another stone to Tommy's prison with each circuit. Sarah counted the pattern: 15 steps from the rock pile to the canyon wall, 10 steps along the base of the cliff, then 15 steps back. At the closest point of its approach to the wall, the beast would be standing directly below the balanced boulder. Sarah positioned herself carefully, bracing her feet against solid rock and taking aim at the keystone with her rifle. She would have to fire at the exact moment the creature reached the correct position, and her shot would have to be perfect. There would be no second chance. The beast completed another circuit, adding yet another stone to Tommy's burden. Her brother's cries were growing weaker, more desperate. Sarah forced herself to remain calm, to wait for the perfect moment. The creature began its next approach to the canyon wall, those massive paws carrying it steadily closer to the killing zone below the balanced boulder. 10 steps from the wall. Sarah's finger found the trigger. 5 steps. She held her breath, steadying her aim. 3 steps. The creature was almost directly below the massive stone now. 2 steps. Sarah pulled the trigger. The rifle's crack echoed off the canyon walls as her bullet struck the key stone dead center. The wedge-shaped piece exploded into fragments, and for a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the massive boulder groaned, shifted, and began its thunderous descent toward the canyon floor. The creature looked up just in time to see tons of rock plummeting toward it. Those intelligent yellow eyes went wide with the first genuine fear Sarah had seen in them. The beast threw itself sideways with desperate strength, but it was too massive to change direction quickly enough. The boulder struck the canyon floor with a sound like the end of the world, followed immediately by an inhuman scream of pain and rage. When the dust began to settle, Sarah could see the creature pinned beneath the massive stone, its legs trapped and dark blood spreading across the rocky ground. But it was still alive, still conscious, and those yellow eyes burned with hatred and pain as they found Sarah on her high perch. "Clever little mouse," the beast gasped, its voice strained but still carrying that terrible intelligence. "You have won this round, but I am old, older than your settlement, older than your grandfather's grandfather. I have survived worse than this. I will heal, and I will remember. The Mackenzie line is marked now." Sarah climbed down from the ledge using a more gradual path she had spotted earlier. When she reached the canyon floor, she approached the trapped creature cautiously, her rifle ready. The massive boulder had crushed both of the beast's hind legs and part of its pelvis. It would never walk again, but it was far from dead. "Your brother," the creature said through gritted fangs, nodding toward the pile of stones. "He grows silent. Perhaps you should see to him before he joins me in the darkness." Sarah hurried to the rock pile where Tommy was trapped, setting down her rifle to begin pulling away the stones. Her brother was unconscious but breathing, his legs clearly broken, but not as badly as she had feared. It would take time to free him completely, but he would live. "Sarah," Tommy whispered as she worked, his eyes fluttering open. "The thing, where is it?" Pinned under a boulder, she replied, not looking away from her work. It can't hurt us anymore. But even as she said it, Sarah could hear the creature behind her, speaking in a voice that grew weaker, but no less malevolent. This is not over, little Mackenzie, it rasped. I have children in the deep caves, offspring that carry my intelligence and my hunger. They know your scent now, know your family's blood. The hunt will continue long after I am gone. Sarah paused in her work, a chill running down her spine. She turned to look at the trapped creature, seeing the cruel satisfaction in its fading yellow eyes. Let them come, she said quietly, surprised by the steel in her own voice. The Mackenzies have been hunting dangerous things for generations. We know how to fight monsters. The creature's laugh was barely a whisper now, its massive form growing still as life slowly ebbed away. But its final words carried clearly across the canyon floor, a promise that would haunt Sarah for the rest of her days. They will come in the darkness when you least expect them. They will come for your children, and your children's children. The blood debt must be paid, little Mackenzie. The hunt never truly ends. Then the yellow eyes went dark, and the terror of the frontier was finally still. But Sarah knew the creature's final words were more than just the ravings of a dying monster. Somewhere in the deep caves and hidden valleys of these mountains, other things waited. The immediate threat was over, but the larger war was just beginning. She returned to freeing her brother, working steadily to clear away the stones while her mind already turned to the future. There would be preparations to make, defenses to build, and perhaps most importantly, others to train. The Mackenzie family had always been hunters, but now they would need to become something more. They would need to become monster hunters, guardians against the darkness that lurked in the wild places beyond civilization's reach. And Sarah Mackenzie, who had faced down a nightmare and lived to tell the tale, would be the first of a new generation of guardians. The hunt, as the dying creature had promised, would never truly end.